back, everyone, to another episode of Hyperspace Hype One-on-One. I am your host, Brandon, and I am joined here by one of my personal favorite YouTube channels, probably within the last decade. I am joined here by Zach and Craven, Auralnauts. Welcome, guys.
Hey, how's it going? Yeah, thanks so much for having us. And thank you for such a generously awesome intro.
Yeah, I can think of a million things in the last 10 years that are probably better than we are. So that's a good compliment.
Man,
Thanks.
I'm gonna be honest. You guys got me through the past, I'd say, 4 years of like whenever I'm feeling down, I throw in an Auralnauts video. Boom, back in the game. So you guys have seriously helped me out with everything, guys. So thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you. Yeah.
Dude, our pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. So
That's
go ahead.
That's what it's all about.
So this is a new segment we're doing. This is only episode 2 of the one-on-one. Well, technically 1-on-2 now, but so basically what it is here was we're just gonna talk with other passionate Star Wars fans, and get to learn about them a little bit. And since you guys are Auralnauts, and like I've been wanting to interview you guys for like the longest time. So what inspired Auralnauts?
You know what's interesting about that? We get that question quite a bit, as you can imagine, and we never have like a good answer prepped. We just never have one ready to go. But
because there wasn't like a concentrated. Everything just sort of happened. That's kind of like it's like painfully realistic. There was no like clear genesis other than just like you wanting to make fun of something and then just hit me up for like to see if I wanted to help out. That's kind of that's just as
I think
exciting
that's as good of a way as any to
think.
put it. I mean, we come from similar fields in the production industry, and sometimes you get stuck in sort of boxes in the industry, and we just had other things we wanted to say and do, and we didn't have quite an outlet for it. So we worked on a couple projects together, and we hit it off immediately. And then when the time came to take it off the map a little bit, we were just like a natural fit for collaborating. And that's exactly how Bane came about. And from there, we just knew we had to keep doing that.
Right.
Yeah, that's I'll always drop any opportunity to get people to watch Spirit Questers. That's the first thing that we ever. Craven had this project he'd been working on. It was a parody of Ghost Adventures.
Yeah, Ghost Adventures,
is that the right
which is
show?
still going strong.
Ghost Adventures, yeah. Yeah, they're still. I finally like checked it out because of Spirit Questers. I'm like, man, these douchebags are still like. Well, that was the whole thing. It was just making fun of these like bros that are. That there's no like real qualification to be a ghost investigator, so it's like anybody can do it, and these guys are definitely.
I mean, we don't know these guys personally, so I don't want to say if they're like good or bad people, but the show is obviously.
They're on camera.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty, I'll judge
pretty
it.
Rough.
That's who they present, so that's all I got. But he was like deep into this idea, and so he reached out to some friends to see if they knew any just pure writers that could help out punch the script up and format it a little bit. And Craven was working professionally with my roommate at the time, so and my roommate was like, I know a guy, I live with a guy, he writes. he thinks he can. So he introduced us, and we met up at a bar, and just probably the fastest, like 6 hours or something like that, dude. It was like, I was like, how many drinks have I had? How long have we been sitting here? Like, it was just so easy, like such an easy collaboration. And we just started just bouncing ideas off of each other like instantly, and just started making each other laugh. And it was just like, before I knew it, I was wrecked. Because it's a bar. Like, if you want to sit there, you got to keep drinking. And we just like couldn't stop like coming up with ideas together. So we just kept drinking.
That was great. I mean, and Spirit Questers, by the way, it's online, so people can find it. That was our first, collaborative thing. But I think one of these days we're probably going to try to release it on Auralnauts. One of these days, when the time is right, we'll drop it on the channel.
It's like the opposite. Like, I am nowhere to be found, like physically, and it's all like Craven front and center. Like he's like the main character in this thing, and then like you can catch a glimpse of me like as like part of the fake documentary crew. You know, like I've got like a camera on my shoulder, no beard, like I'm completely unrecognizable.
That actually kind of brings me into my next question about videos and all that. Probably one of the biggest things that you guys are known for are your parodies and Star Wars parodies, and I'm pretty sure that's what got me hooked on your channel. What inspired the parodies for the Star Wars movies?
Just like to start them, to even just decide to make them.
Just to like even think of, hey, let's kind of do a like a commentary or like a or kind of a script for a parody for these movies.
For me personally, I think we were trying to figure out what our next move was from Bane. We didn't have a whole series of things lined up after Bane. It was like a one-shot deal where we just wanted to do that and get it out there and see what might happen. And then after it sort of took off a little bit, we were thinking, you know, what do we want to follow up with? What's our... And we had like a wealth of ideas, but I think the reason we went to Star Wars is because we both had a feeling about the prequels that we had something to say about. And it just became our muse to continue that sort of process. And it was also an opportunity to start digging just a little bit deeper into how you deal with multiple characters acting in different ways instead of, you know, Bane was all about Bane. There are a couple other side characters, but they don't mean much. And it's really kind of a light piece. With Star Wars, we thought this is something we can kind of dig into a little bit more in terms of the types of jokes we're telling, in terms of some storytelling. I don't think we exactly knew how far we would get with that when we started with the Phantom Menace. I don't think we actually knew that we were going to keep going with it, but
yeah, Phantom Menace was, we sort of at that point only had one method, which was like the Bane outtakes method. So we were like, let's do the outtakes formula to Phantom Menace. That's why it's a little bit, wow, sorry guys, I got like Queens traffic outside here. This is dude, it's just
a straight up apocalypse
like
going on.
Car alarms. Last night there was like the only cars on the road are just like drag racers. Like it was
That's
just
because
drag
there's nobody out there to
Queens Boulevard.
You know, enforce the law.
There's no one to stop them. Yeah.
Mayhem.
Dude, the street
Escape
gangs
from
are
New York,
already
dude.
showing up.
Happening right in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. I want to see Isaac Hayes with like just a chainmail guy with like a. Didn't he have like lampshades on the front of his limo? He had like full blown like chandeliers on his.
Yeah.
That guy was opulence personified. Anyway, yeah, we so that's why when you watch Phantom Menace, it's a little less coherent. It's a little bit more skit based. Like things just move at a weird clip, and there's not a lot of like character development. Or we were just doing the same thing we did with Bane outtakes, which is just find scenes that are funny to us that maybe have a joke in them, and then just make that joke and then move on.
I'll tell you something that was kind of funny about it though was that our the use of a musical number, you know, inside of the piece. We had done the rap in Bane, but when it came time that, you know, deciding to do that same thing in the Phantom Menace was not a matter of trying to duplicate the formula. It really just was like something that happened late in the game where we were like, wow, you know what might be really funny here is like a dance number with these characters where it's like a dance fight.
We're like, why are they, what are we going to do with this fight?
And the fight scene, I mean, we weren't also just interested in doing a fight, you know, dance fight. I think the choreography in that particular sequence, which arguably that's one of the greatest fights in any Star Wars. I mean, that's an awesome, you know, choreographed fight sequence. But I think some of it tends to feel a little bit clinical, and I think we were sort of tapping into that. It doesn't help also that George Lucas just puts the camera down on sticks and doesn't move it anywhere. So every shot is super static and really weirdly framed. And the fight is the choreography is so clean. We're like, this is just a dance. So let's make it into like a dance thing. These are just dudes out at a club, you know, fighting on the floor of some weird club
with their rave sticks. Yeah. And that the whole idea of Lucas not moving the camera at all is what actually led to those really beautiful kaleidoscope shots that show up in all those dance scenes. Now, because this camera is so static, it allows for that. So then you get like some, you know, Craven's created some of my favorite images from those kaleidoscope shots, like the Power of the Force music video, quote unquote. You know, it's just mostly an audio track with just this really cool visual blossom happening behind it. Basically, it's all I think it's Empire Strikes Back, right?
Yeah, that was that.
Like in the
Yep.
in the Cloud City
Oh,
shaft.
Metachlorify?
Yeah, no. It's just a standalone
Oh,
track, Power of
gotcha.
the Force. But the whole video is just kaleidoscopes from backgrounds, and some of them are just that's what the cover of the album is just a still from that, and some of those, and that's all because Star Wars style is like no camera movement. You know, it's you just end up with these really cool opportunities to make strange visual tricks because of that.
Right. So, moving forward past episode 1, what kind of inspired you to like create an entire basically Auralnauts saga for it now? Because you guys were mentioning how like you didn't really have a story moving forward. What kind of inspired moving the story forward between episode 2 and 6?
Episode 2?
I think the main, episode 2 I think was just like, where do those characters that it was just developing like forward momentum based on the jokes we made in the first one, which was that they were burnout party losers. So that was just sort of, and then like the consequences of that burnout party lifestyle would be businesses and other people having to deal with it. So that's sort of just like the jokes all became about how would that play out in this scene, you know, what are they talking about in this scene that's related to that lifestyle and those and the consequences of those lifestyles. It's, and then it also became like the sub plot became like Anakin is a total loser in the movies. Like in the actual movies, he would never score someone like Padme. So let's make that the driving force too. That like, what kind of guy would he really be, based on this character that was presented to us in the prequels? Like that guy would never land a princess.
Yeah, no, Lucas didn't give
like
Lucas didn't give any justification
woman,
for that
you know?
romance whatsoever. There was nothing that actually was on screen that showed us that they deserved one another in any way whatsoever.
Right.
And so when you redub those scenes, visually, I feel like it plays out more in our favor. That it's awkward and he's awkward and weird and like gets rejected all the time because that's what their chemistry actually looks like. You know, they always just look really uncomfortable around each other and like unsure and weirded out.
Yeah,
and it's just I don't know,
there's a
it was
tricky
fun to
thing
mess
too.
around with.
I think when we started moving into, we knew that episodes 2 and 3 had plenty of fodder for us to make fun of in the same way that we did for the Phantom Menace, if not more. You know what I mean? But so we weren't worried about that. When we got to episodes 4, 5, and 6, there was such a tonal shift. We had to sort of consider what that might feel like and how to continue the same storytelling, but in this other sort of sense. And I think part of that is that you're slightly stuck on a road when you're overdubbing something and trying to work within the confines of the story that already exists, because you can't radically change the story so much that you're not having like one character get from point A to point B if that's what they do in the film. You know, you're kind of stuck with what's happening visually and storytelling wise to some degree. So while we're still trying to tell this story about the Jedi being these guys and the Empire being this system, you know, this like giant company that's like just trying to, you know, have family fun time events, you still have to kind of follow the structure that's in the films themselves. And that proved to be really challenging as we started getting further down the line, because you're not only doing this sort of cascading storytelling of your own thing, but you're having to also follow what the story that they're telling. So in some ways it's a little bit confining, but in other ways it's also kind of freeing, because you don't have to figure out a certain number of things either. You know, you sort of have a nice roadmap to go from. That's sort of the flip side of the coin, is like, since the roadmap is there, it frees you up to not have to problem solve a number of things. So it's definitely going to be interesting taking us into episodes 7, 8, 9 for sure, which we already have completely planned out.
And,
so
Oh my god.
yeah, we got the roadmap for that. Yeah, so it's we don't have like the exact dialogue or anything, but we know everything that needs to happen.
and it's a complete extension of everything else. It's not something different. It's like 100% the same story,
Yeah.
the same characters, like all the fallout of all of that. But it's not it doesn't go like too deep into our own thing. It's still exactly along the line. Like you could watch The Phantom Menace and then watch episode 9 probably, hopefully, and it would still make sense in some weird way. So we're kind of excited about that.
Yeah, and going into 4, 5, and 6, because they were so different, but they were also just, to us anyway, subjectively, 4, 5, and 6 are just better films, like overall, like from a filmmaking perspective, narratively, stylistically, they're just better. So we're like, what do we make fun of here?
Yeah.
Because in the prequels, we spent a lot of time making fun of the prequels themselves.
Right.
And so we're like, we don't really have the same things to make fun of. So our driving creative force on those ones was just to keep making fun of the prequels.
Exactly.
As much as
Yeah,
possible.
exactly.
Which is why you get like stormtroopers saying like, "Are you sure you're not a Jedi because you're dressed exactly like one? Like what you're wearing?" Because that's a stupid oversight. Like when the first time we saw Obi-Wan ever in the history of life, the first time we see Obi-Wan, he's wearing robes, and we just assume it's because he's a hermit living in the desert. That's like, oh, those are desert clothes because that's appropriate for where he's at. And then the prequels come out and they're like, nope, that's how they all dress, always, forever. That's the uniform of the Jedi.
Yeah.
And he's hiding out in the uniform of the Jedi. So we have our characters making fun of that.
You know why we were also weirded out by Jedi wearing robes in The Phantom Menace? It's because in Return of the Jedi, they threw Luke, they threw him this like bomb new outfit, and it was like, oh, the Jedi are flexible. They have like they're not just dudes who wear robes. They have like this whole system where if they're really badass, they can just be dressed in all black in these like uniforms. Like what is that uniform? Did Luke just make that out of thin air? Was he like, I feel badass now that I'm like mostly a Jedi. I'm gonna be all
to me, what that meant was that, a Jedi will wear whatever they're most comfortable in because they're the most like physically minded combat specialists in the universe. He's like, if I want to wear like karate pants, I'm going to wear that. If I want to wear sweats, whatever gives me the most freedom to do Jedi moves.
I mean,
so
for me, I was expecting Jedi to have uniforms that looked a little bit like Luke in Return of the Jedi, because I was like, does he have some line to what Jedi used to actually wear now that he's like come back as, the guy? It was just weird that so in a sense that uniform that he was wearing is this strange outlier. What is that? Mm-hmm. Like what is that? What does it even mean? Why is he wearing that weird black outfit?
And I started getting into Clone Wars a little bit because it's on Disney Plus and everyone's just been recommending. I've never watched any of the CGI.
It's such a good show.
Well, what they did, they're doing a really good job of sort of making sense out of things. And one of the things they did right away was give them Jedi combat uniforms, which look really cool. Like Obi-Wan and Anakin both have this like, it's like a mix between clone trooper armor and Jedi stuff. So it's got like shoulder pads and a chest plate, but it's also got some flowing sleeves and things like going like a tailcoat kind of going on. So that's like, okay, that's a combat Jedi. That makes sense. But to the idea of them like in episode 2 in that Coliseum, they're all just rushing into combat wearing pajamas. It's like, this looks ridiculous. These guys look like they just got
in fact
rolled out of
Mace
bed and showed up
Windu
here.
like had to get rid of his robe because it turned out to be super cumbersome and it was on fire. Like it lit on fire like instantly. It was just like the worst thing to be wearing.
It was a liability right out of the gate.
He was like
the second he started fighting.
Like, can you imagine if soldiers had to like get rid of capes and things like while they were just fighting? Like they're in their trenches and they're like, oh fuck this cape. I gotta get this thing off.
Yeah.
It's on fire. Like, I can't be dragging this thing around with me.
I just dragged it through like a puddle, and now it's like covered in gasoline.
Oh my god!
Man.
Sorry to go off on that tangent there,
yeah,
man.
So that's
no, it's great.
That gives you an idea of where we tried to keep our mindset as we went into episode 4, 5, and 6, because we're like, these are great movies. How do we make fun of them? It's like, we don't make fun of them. We keep developing our story. Like, what would those characters be doing 30 years later? How would that universe look in that world, and how can we
there's also not just the prequels, but I think also making fun of movie making in general, because any creator is going to get stuck at some point over developing their own universe, and there's nothing you can do about it. Like at first it was like holograms are the thing. That's how people communicate in Star Wars. You know, they use holograms, and that's like the future, or like a galaxy far, far away, or whatever. They use holograms instead of TV screens. But then, of course, like in Empire Strikes Back, they're like, how do we do this more efficiently? So they had to introduce just TV screens. So it's like, oh, they have TV screens. Like, okay. And then so now it's like they use holograms and TV screens, and that's not anybody's fault. That's just at some point, you know, efficient storytelling demands that you start dropping conceits that weren't totally necessary. So, you know, we start making fun of the idea of it's holograms or TV screens. So Vader's like, can't you just tell me over the screen? Like, why do I have to go visit your hologram to do this? You know, like that doesn't even make sense.
And then there's a very real world thing that I at least I've experienced personally, which is someone paging you to come see them. It's just like, dude, I'm right around the corner. Like, we're on the phone. Right. No, this is face-to-face business. I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, yeah. So I've actually dealt with like a boss that it's a power move. It's a completely pointless, you know, display of authority. They're like, I'm making you come see me, even though it's completely worthless use of both of our time. You know, it's just like, I do it because I can, and I think, and it gives me pleasure to make you do this, to walk 20 feet, to tell you something that I could just tell you instead of asking you to come see me. So it's like, So there's a little bit of like real corporate jokes we can make in there. Like even in the first episode in the Jedi Party, you've got the Emperor talking about saving your receipts because, you know, it's still a business trip. So it's like real minutia of like just having a corporate job.
Right.
Can be sprinkled in there as well. Like we could have a lot of fun with that. Thinking of the Empire as a real corporation. We could just get corporate jokes in there that are maybe a little too real for some people.
So you guys mentioned that you're doing the sequel trilogy now. Will you guys be using the same Kylo Ren that you use in your videos, or will you guys be using a completely different character for Kylo?
We can say straight up that it's a totally different character. It's not even close. It's not like he's not like Kylo at all. He's a completely new guy. I think the problem with using the Kylo that we've sort of done is that he is, for all intents and purposes, an extension of the actual character in most ways. So we don't want to do that at all for our story.
Yeah, like our version is like, our version that we use now is like critiquing the canon universe. So he exists, even though he's like clearly a parody, he still exists within the real Star Wars universe. So to have him cross over like that would just be kind of weird. It's
gotcha. So, I didn't throw this in the lineup for questions, but I just thought of this. What made you guys decide who does what voice for the videos? Like, because I know like Zach has like Creepio, Anakin, and then I know Craven does Obi-Wan. I can't remember the other characters he voices. Like, what kind of made you guys decide who does what?
We just try it out and see who sounds the most appropriate.
We try to do as many of the voices as we can ourselves. Like, we basically do everything ourselves, and then if we run into roadblocks, mostly in terms of if we need other voice actors or somebody to do like visual effects or something, those are the two areas that we'll reach out for collaboratives or assistance on. But for the most part, we're handling everything front to back, and we try to do as many of the voices as we can. You know, we don't want to ruin the experience by just sounding like every person in the piece. So that's why it's cool to have, like, if there are 5 people talking in a scene, if they all sound like literally different people, then it's more effective to us. So, but in terms of determining the voices, Zach, that's pretty much it. Like, we decide who feels that they're in the right zone for the voice. Zach does great impressions. I'm less of an impressionist, and I think I just go for things that might match my tone or my speaking style.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes it's just you just do a voice and see if it looks appropriate coming out of that character's face. Like, for instance, I do Anakin. I don't sound like Hayden Christensen, but when I talk, it's believable that that's coming out of that person. And then but sometimes. And then same with Craven, he does Duke And he doesn't necessarily sound like young Mark Hamill. Sometimes he really does, especially when he's like the more like episode 4 New Hope, like bright-eyed Luke Skywalker. But it's just like the way he does that voice, it just sounds like it's coming out of Mark Hamill. So it's sometimes it's just a matter of like we both try it and then we're okay, that one's better. You do your
Luke and also Yoda, which I can only do in small pockets before my voice is totally shredded. I have no idea how Frank Oz even does that. I have no clue.
Yeah, I think Frank Oz, when you hear his natural voice, he's
already
like,
almost Yoda.
Almost there. He's got him and like when he talks, he kind of walks this line between Fozzie Bear and Yoda like all the time. I remember seeing him in Spies Like Us, and like his angry voice is just like almost becoming Fozzie. I was like, oh, that's just you.
Oh, you should hear him in Knives Out.
He's got an amazing voice. Oh yeah, he's great. We didn't even know that was him. Like that. Well, I didn't at first when I saw the cast list.
Wait.
Oh, I was watching it on Amazon, and when you pause the movie, he's the executor of the estate.
Of course. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. That's why I kind of, not to get into this, but I'm a big supporter of Rian Johnson. I think he's actually a fantastic filmmaker. I think he's got a lot of great ideas. I think he's got a great future. But Knives Out was just so funny to me because it was like a lot of what he was dealing with in that narrative was entitlement and expectations and people being upset that their entitlement and expectations were not being met. And so you could take this as far as you want. I may just be blowing, like, just talking shit, but to have Yoda, Frank Oz, come in and tell this family, you're not going to get what you think you deserve, was just like, did he do that on purpose? Because I really like that. I like the cut of his jib on that one.
Dude, like, I didn't think about that at first. Like, yeah, he brought in Yoda to tell everyone to eat shit.
Yeah. Yeah. To tell everybody to sit down and just like, and also to like
I have theories that the whole film was a veiled shot at Disney and at Abrams, frankly.
That just kind of makes me like wonder who each character is supposed to be. Like if you go down that road, you start thinking about like, what is Chris Evans? Is he like JJ? Is he like, no, I'm on your side? And then at the last minute, he's like, psych, I've been like pushing my own like agenda, and I'm going to throw you under the bus first chance I get. But I don't know if that happened yet. It's like in the real world, so it's hard to say. But it's a beautifully crafted little.
Yeah, I love it.
Adventure, and that's one of my favorite movies of the last year.
Oh man,
for sure.
For sure. Knives Out was fantastic.
So good.
Yeah. So, speaking of having your voice shredded, I've had a conversation a while ago with Zach about Creepio and how that absolutely destroys his voice.
Yeah.
What was the inspiration for Creepio?
He shreds.
Man,
that was like a real time discovery. We were watching Phantom Menace together, and when he woke up, we just started laughing about how absurd it is that he's not finished. If he's just like being switched on to impress someone, and he wakes up so confused. He has no eye. Like one of his eyes is gone, and he has to like shove it back into his head while he's awake. Like, and we were like, if this was a human, this would be traumatic. This would be torture. It would break you. So then, the scream, like we just started making jokes on the fly, and that voice was just introduced right away. That was the voice. The whole time.
His physical mannerisms were just. His physical mannerisms in that moment are so loud and weird, and it just. Yeah. Sometimes that's kind of part of our process, right? Is we'll be watching a scene and just doing voices over it to find out what kind of fits. And then I think Zach, you kind of unlocked it though. You were just kind of you were, we're talking over it and it's like, ouch, help and whatever. And then you were just like, like you just found this tone in this upper register of your voice. That was like, it was like, and then you were, I was like, we're like a Renfield thing, and it was just, it
was a little Renfield, like a little Starscream, like, it was just and then with like Hellraiser jokes, because it was just, we were just making body horror jokes, because it's like, in the original film, the original Hellraiser film, one of the most, like, visually just horrifying things in that movie is this guy basically coming back from hell he escapes because of like something that happened in the real world allowed him to come back, and he was just slowly pieced back together from nothing. He was like a spinal column burst out of the floor, and then you just watch this creepy stop motion animated skeletal structure, like muscles form over it and a brain shows up, and it's just this really like elaborate and really painful looking process of this person being like introduced piece by piece back into the physical world. And then he doesn't have skin. Like that's what the whole joke came. The whole movie is about him just trying to get his skin back. Like, you know, when you think Hellraiser, you think of like Pinhead, and like there's all these visually striking like creatures that are associated with the film franchise. But the original film, the villain was like this creepy uncle who just came back, but not enough of him came back. So he was just this bloody like musculature guy in a suit who was just trying to lure people into the attic so he could take their skin. So that was sort of like where the main like source of the jokes came from. It was just like a funny version of Hellraiser. And so this guy, this robot that had no skin or like outer covering was just became obsessed with
and for me personally, I sort of hated what Lucas did there. I sort of there are so many things that seem wrong to me about it. I mean, the least of which is that Anakin made C-3PO. That's been talked about to death, right? But you know, he turns him on, and the way that he's walking when he sort of like shambles from point A to point B over to R2-D2. Of course, the first thing he does is meets R2-D2, which is also obnoxious. But
so dumb,
the way he sort of walks, like, is there any point when you're building a robot where when it's almost done, it doesn't look or act or function in any way close to what it will once it's finally done? Like, what is that robot doing? It's like it can't walk correctly. It's like the way that it's like nothing like C-3PO, which is so bizarre because at what stage is he? He can get up and walk around and talk, right? So does he just have to put like metal plates over him? You know, and then when does he start walking like a normal,
because the way he walks
being, like a normal robot?
He's walking like a marionette, like someone has him on strings. Like he's just like his legs kind of hobble in this like bouncy way that looks like he's being controlled.
Yeah, and it definitely looks like he's in some kind of awful pain. You know, it's like why would they do that to him? So in a way, it was us kind of like making fun of that decision to make him be so just completely bizarre in that scene. Is like, how can we just completely derail this? And then it sort of blossomed from there.
The part
and then
the part that makes me lose it every time is when 3PO hunches over to R2 and says, "All I feel is pain."
Because you would. That's like he's just become the extension of like what maybe a person would be going through if they were awakened and they had no skin. Like that's a horrifying experience. And for all intents and purposes, he's a conscious being. Like he's aware of his state and his
and Anakin doesn't give a shit. So you know, he's just sitting there. He doesn't care. You know, he doesn't care.
He's just talking to
one of my favorite things that we did that, you know, like that's similar to you laughing about him yelling, "All I feel is pain." One of my favorite things in that scene is just, it gets me every time when Anakin just callously shoves that eyeball back in his head, like while he's awake, and we just go, "Ah!" He's like, "No, ah!" Like he doesn't want it. Like he sees it coming, and he's like, "Don't just do that. Like what is wrong with you? Why is my maker so evil?" So of course, it's the first thing he arrives at is like, I must be experiencing this because I'm supposed to. Like
that's me to feel the pain.
My purpose.
That was the other thing, is that we felt like he was so insane with this shock of being, you know, woken up and in pain that he's just hearing voices. So R2-D2 is like not saying anything to him. He's just hearing everything in his own head as he's just in this like shocked moment.
And the only taste of that you get, we actually go inside his head one time, and that's in episode 3 when he's listening to Anakin and Padme talk about the baby.
Give the baby.
So you get like a real,
that's definitely,
you get like a real version of like what he's hearing. And it's like all this horror tones and like high pitched wailing and shit in the background.
And everybody's
like,
voice is like
just
slow and kind of mangled. It's horrifying. Like to imagine that's what Creepio hears all the time. Like that's how he's like hearing the world anytime anybody's talking to him.
Yeah, And you can sort of imagine how this guy would arrive at all of his like insane plans all the time. He's just never quite hearing things correctly.
Creepio comes back strong in episode 7, 8, 9 too, which is great.
Oh yeah, dude, I can't wait.
Oh my god, that's exciting. Oh man, that's great.
I mean, it's like you can't, like, as disappointed as I was with The Rise of Skywalker, you can't hate on the amount of 3PO they gave us.
Yes.
With just like in like different
Yeah.
setups. He's got like he's plugged into shit. He's got red eyes. Like there's so much going on with him visually that we could use. So we're definitely really excited about that.
Okay, so one last topic I wanted to ask about the parodies are what inspired the music, like all those music videos that you guys do. What kind of inspired you to, like, for that kind of genre of music that you do?
Oh, that's all Craven's.
That's a pretty tough question
influences.
because we try to bring in as many influences as possible. You know, like sometimes I'll score a scene that with just sort of like electronica or you know, in orchestration, like the scene in episode 6 where Creepio is like having his weird Saw memory flashback. You know, I couldn't find a piece of music. We couldn't find a piece of music that quite fit that sequence or was like the right length and had the right sort of build up to the climactic ending. So I just had to like score it, you know? But in terms of the music, we just have a lot of influences and loves for certain styles, and we sort of crisscross on those, and then we intersect at the right places, and it's a lot of electronica influences, a lot of like industrial influences, and a lot of, you know, 80s sort of synth wavy stuff, and so a lot of it is really just the thing. Like, so I produce music pretty much. That's pretty much what I've been doing like my whole life. So that's always been there for me. And then when it comes to composing tracks together, you know, we'll sit down in the studio, we'll like look through beats together, we'll find certain inspirations together. And then lyrics are really great because that's where we're really jiving with things.
Right.
Is in the lyric writing phase, that's so much fun because we're both, you know, coming at it from, you know, what we're trying to say for the sequences or the scenes, and it's like there's a lot of laughter in that phase, you know, clearly. Like, the music is sort of its own thing often, but the lyrics are sort of where something is unlocked, and that's where the comedy really is. So
And then you get different stuff too. Like I think In the Zone may be the one outlier musically that's like not a clear, not clearly inspired by those usual sources. That's purely like, and that's one of the reasons why in the video itself, this guy Robert Tepper shows up in there, because that song was supposed to be representative of that era of like montage, 80s movie montage music. So we just got a guy who was like the king of that 80s movie montage back in the day, and to be like this weird presence in the video. So it's like from the what song did Robert Tepper do? No, he didn't do Hearts on Fire. He did
it was the
No
Rocky
Easy Way
song,
Out.
right? Yeah,
from Rocky 4, No Easy Way Out. And the real music video was sort of similar to In the Zone, where it was like shots of Robert Tepper in this weird stage with these fences and just jumping off the stuff, and then it would just cut to, instead of Anakin, it was just Sylvester Stallone just like driving real angrily in a car, just thinking about. It was basically like a highlight reel from Rocky.
Yeah.
It was like him thinking about like. So it's just clips from the rest of the movies, intercut with him driving, and then Robert Tepper in the actual music video. That's how it played out. So we just kind of kept that same visual language. Just put Star Wars shit in there instead of Rocky shit.
Yeah.
And, that was like In the Zone was very much like an 80s power ballad, you know, sad montage, like to get your shit together montage. Not necessarily a training montage, but like an emotional hump montage. Right. So for Rocky, it was sadness over the loss of a friend. For Anakin, it was sadness over the loss of getting some.
I hit the friend zone.
And we tried to do our best to make it like it wasn't being done to him. Like clearly he sucked so bad that there was no reason why he should land this relationship. Right. So and just like just insult to injury that Obi-Wan was so effortlessly able to he didn't even try. He was just like, yeah, I'm just doing my thing, and she was like, I'm into that thing, like, let's hook me up with your friend.
It's just so funny when they're rolling and she's like, do you think Obi-Wan would go out with me?
Yeah, just such a deflation that he just thought like, this is it, we're crossing that line. She's like, oh man, that's such a good day, what's up with your boy? It's
I mean, she takes that she takes that all the way too. The whole like, but who's gonna, what is the line where she's like, but I need somebody
who's gonna plan my baby shower.
Yeah, it's brutal. It's just it just never stops. Like it's a nonstop brutal attack. It's terrible.
Baby shower. Because even pregnant, even she's pregnant. Even then, he's still like, maybe this is my shot. Like he just won't give up, and it's like it just becomes so sad and pathetic.
I can't say actually why the music became something that sort of makes an appearance in so many of our videos. I mean, I think it's just a lot of it is that's largely what we do is music, but also it became part of our storytelling for so many videos, and we don't try to work music into something where we don't feel it belongs. We try to make sure that there's a reason for it. But also music is just another amazing way to express a story idea or a joke in a way that's different and has reach, and I think that's why, for example, we wanted to do Creepio's PSA as like a recent thing. We wanted to do that as a song rather than just him like speaking. It could have easily been him, on the set of Sesame Street talking to those people, but it's not nearly as catchy. It's not nearly it doesn't have nearly as much of a reach. There's something about
that one also had. Go ahead.
Oh no, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, that was like a kind of a no-brainer for us though, because the first rap we did with him, the youth biology PSA, where he's like, that one was purely just promotional. Like we just made it to let people know that the next episode was going to come out soon. Right. And so we just made this like elaborate. But the reason we chose to make that a rap is because the source material is a rap. Yeah. Rap. Yeah, like 3PO really raps about this attraction at, was it Universal Studios at the time?
Yeah.
Or Star Tours?
Star Tours, yeah.
Yeah. And so he did a rap, and so it was we're just like, let's just do our own rap, and we just put a more modern, like contemporary, like trap beat over it, and made it this hard ass, just track about puberty, which of course is the most creepio version of puberty. He just gets it completely wrong. So we were just like, let's like make another rap. That's the best possible way to talk about. And we made this one. We tried to make it. It's not promotional. We don't like attach anything to this. We're just purely like just trying to put something out there to like just to keep everyone's spirits up a little bit in the best way we know how to, which is like a goofy character driven rap. So
yeah, sometimes having music and things turns people off. They're like, oh, here we go with the musical number, and that's fine, that's cool. It's not for everybody, that's for sure, but it's definitely going to be part of our language.
Hey, you guys make it work.
One of my favorite turns is that in episode 5 there's midichlorify, which is tonally different. And it was a challenge though, because like all the songs in the previous ones were mostly just for these like really brightly lit, over the top fight scenes that we just pivoted as dance offs. Yeah. But there's something that happens in Empire Strikes Back where it's just this fight plays out completely differently than any other thing we've seen so far. It's really sort of gruesome, dark, sad, sweaty. Like it's like it's not like any other fight we'd seen. And so like musically we're like, it can't be this, we can't like visually make this the same as like all the other dance fights. This doesn't look like a dance fight. This looks like a fight that the main character is losing badly. Right. So when we finally arrived at like a darker song that largely plays out in his head, that was sort of like our setup for why Duke doesn't come back as like a Jedi, like a party Jedi guy. He comes back as the Laser Master, which is like a darker, more goth version of like what these guys were in the previous episodes. And I think when that song first came out, people were a little thrown off by it. They were just like, I'm not sure about this song. It's not my favorite. And I was kind of bummed about it because I really love that song. It's like the most industrial.
Yeah, we made the original music video elements for that in the same way that we were going to do that with the Robert Tepper piece. We were going to shoot, Zach and a couple other people on a beach, and make it feel like some video from 1980. But we decided just to go with some pre-existing,
the most 80s
thing
actual
ever.
80s stuff. Yeah.
So with Midichlorify, the one thing with Midichlorify that we did though was we put it after the last story beat. So it's more like a post story thing. So we didn't feel like it was like getting in the way because we knew it was a little bit different. So, anybody could stop after.
And it was like, it was like
Luke is
after
hanging.
Luke.
That's that.
Yeah, Luke's having a bad trip, and then like once he's finally hanging on that thing by himself, he really like goes on his vision quest. His like DMT style mental trip.
Luke's having a bad trip, and now we're like, you're gonna have a bad trip.
Yeah. And it introduces like the midichlorian or whatever Donnie or JC's name was.
The midichlorian.
Yeah, you got like Craven and our friend JC Powers like shooting lasers into each other's mouths and shit. It's like,
yeah, that was
like,
a total homage to
find
Front 242. Also,
yeah,
I don't
you
know if
watch
you're familiar
like
with Front 242. They're one of our
Headhunter,
favorite sort of old school industrial groups.
Yeah, if you look up the video Headhunter, it's just so it's strange because it looks like it's taking itself so seriously, but they're also just like eating eggs and stuff. Like it's just so like it's like they're clearly having fun, but it looks like they're being completely serious in this black and white industrial. They're all looking off in the same direction at the same time. Like we used all those tricks.
Yeah,
and
totally.
And Headhunter is just a classic industrial track. That's like, there's a whole cover album where just a bunch of bands all cover that one song. It's like 20 versions of that song. So it's definitely has like a
Headhunter is probably the most
that.
Belgian music video you'll ever see in your life.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I love it.
So
something is so Belgian it hurts.
So speaking of that PSA you guys did, I got to congratulate you on Anthony Daniels tweeting you out. That was awesome.
Oh, thanks,
man. Yeah.
I'm just psyched that he put his seal of approval on something where one of the lyrics was, first we'll start by removing your face. that just I'm blown away, that he got behind that.
And I love that he wrote part of his tweet was like so well researched.
He's the man.
Like,
I'm so glad that he came on board for that. That really made our day. It was people don't have to do that. That was awesome that he did that.
Yeah. I had to reply though. I'm like, sorry that like this may seem weird out of context. I'm like, this is actually creepy-o. We're not trying to do you. Like that's because he was like, they need to work on the accent. I'm like, no, man, we're not even trying to do that accent. We'd fail. Like we had to do something different. So.
Oh my God.
And then I don't know if maybe he's watching them right now. Maybe he's just got slippers on and a robe. He's just kicked back watching Jedi Party being like, what the fuck? He's like, the internet is so dumb. Yeah.
Okay. All right, guys. One more question before I dip into some fan questions.
Yeah.
All right, for Zach and Craven, I'm going to ask you guys individually. What is your favorite Star Wars movie?
Oh man.
Yeah, you go first.
I don't know if I can.
Yeah.
That's really a trick question. Tricky, not trick. Sorry. That's a trick question, dude. For me, that's a difficult question because I think like a lot of people, I would go with Empire Strikes Back. I think it's just so solid on so many levels. It's got, for me, there's a nostalgia element to it, so that's hard to get around, right? Everybody's got, when something is part of your nostalgia, you can think something is awesome, but it may not hold up today, right? But so for me, there's that little bit of a trap of nostalgia. But also, when I rewatch it today, it still feels like so solid to me, you know. Mm-hmm. And then this is probably going to confuse a lot of people or make a lot of people like wonder, you know, if I'm okay. But I just think The Last Jedi is so amazing. That film, it's got some things that are not perfect about it, but as a pure film, you know, as like just a singular entity, you know, people say that a film should be its own thing and not depend on other things outside of it, including like other films in the series or, you know, any kind of stuff that's, you know, there to bolster it on the sidelines, like other series or, you know, comics or novels, whatever. To me, that film just feels complete as an experience. It feels like a tight, great piece of filmmaking. Right. And I watch it all the time. I find myself watching that film over and over again because to me there are so many joys in it, in the performances. I think it's you know, Mark Hamill at his best in a long time, and you know, so that's for me that's like my first and second. I'll say that.
Yeah,
I respect that. The other guys in the podcast, their favorite is Last Jedi. So yeah, I can definitely see where you guys are coming from. Where you're coming from.
Nice. Cool. Yeah, that one. Yeah, I have to split I do the same thing, and like as far as like which one is the best film, I agree it's The Last Jedi because it's just not only for all the reasons Craven said, as it's standing up on its own as a film, but as a commentary on everything we've seen before and real, like dealing with real consequences of the decisions of the filmmakers themselves, like the story decisions they chose to make and how like absurd they would be if you thought about it too hard. This movie thinks about it in a way that no other film has, and it has some real consequences as a result that I appreciate it. So it's like and yeah, like that's the best version of Mark Hamill's acting chops that we have seen in any of the Star Wars movies. Like he's otherwise just kind of dopey or lost or confused, and he's not really flexing as hard as he can. He's usually just reacting to, you know, outside consequences. In this one, he's just kind of, he gets to come into his own and really flex as a master in a way that just comes across really beautifully. He's the same as Yoda. When we first saw Yoda was funny. He was very grave. He was very wise. Mm-hmm. And you get those same qualities from Mark Hamill, and he's delivered in this really beautiful way. But in terms of like my favorite, probably I'm going to go with my favorite initial experience watching the film. This may be unpopular, but it was I've thought about it a lot. It was Return of the Jedi. Really? When I was a kid and I first saw that movie, I had the most joy watching that film for the first time that I had watching any of the other films for the first time. It's like, because at that point in my life, I was into creatures. I was into just like over-the-top action. So Return of the Jedi really delivered on things that I just was like so blown away by. Like the first time I saw the Rancor monster, I was like, I've never seen anything like this. This huge monster in a pit. Luke's like beating him with just like without weapons. Like it was just demonstrated everything that I thought was really could be cool about the Star Wars universe. And Jabba's palace was like really brought all that to life. Like this really crazy menagerie of this gallery of creatures that were all just hanging out together, and like I would just watch it over and over again and just try to find other creatures that I had never seen before in the background. Like the background was just like overloaded with stimulus. So to watch that, and then like the Sarlacc pit, like the first time I ever saw that, it was like I was like fascinated and horrified by that at the same time. It was just this gross like antlion hill, you know, that like with just, the hole had teeth on it, but there was like, is that like the creature's mouth? Like there were so many questions, and I'm talking pre-special edition.
Yeah.
Like the
right.
Yeah, the way it looked, like it was like everything about it was practical. It was like dry and slimy in this like really gross way that was and like that reaction that Lando had when that thing wrapped around him, his yelp
yeah.
Like it was like, this sucks and this is also
Disgusting.
gross. Like that's what I got from
Yeah.
And it was just like the whole movie was just loaded for, it was like nonstop discovery, in a way that didn't feel patronized until we got to the Ewoks. Then I was like, but even as a kid though, I was like, I can't lie, I was stoked about the Ewoks as a kid. They were made for me, and I ate it up. I loved the idea that there was this indigenous tribe that lived in the trees that could defeat, an unstoppable force of like backed by technology. Like that was really appealing to me as a kid. I liked underdog stuff, and they were the ultimate underdogs. They were beating like machines with logs. And I was like, so I spent a lot of time in my adult years hating on Return of the Jedi, and then I just thought about it. I was like, I loved that movie as a kid more than I loved any of the other movies when I first saw them. So
wow, that's something I don't think I knew that. I mean, I knew that you loved it, but I don't think I knew that was maybe your favorite.
Yeah, like I'm going purely based on my first experience. That's I feel like that's the only way you can really gauge that. And like, I watched the prequels and I was miserable. I was like, I felt the same way about the prequels that a lot of people today are feeling about the sequels.
Yeah, sort of passionate.
I was just like,
dislike.
what is happening? Yeah, I was like, I was like so apparently obnoxious about it that my friend like recorded a voicemail message on my phone. He was like, "This is Zach, and I love the Phantom Menace. Leave a message for the Phantom Menace." Phantom Menace, and that was it. He was just like, I just wouldn't shut up about it.
So what's your favorite Star Wars movie?
For me, it's definitely Empire Strikes Back, but my second up is definitely Revenge of the Sith. I just have a great memory of me going to see that movie with my dad.
Yeah.
So that movie is up there, and also like the story of it itself. There's just a lot going on in that film where like I personally feel is top tier Star Wars. So
yeah,
I just really enjoy Revenge of the Sith so much. So yeah,
right on.
Yeah,
and I definitely like, especially with everything that's happening today, narratively, like George Lucas was exploring a lot of interesting things politically that are sort of playing out now in the real world. So I can appreciate it in hindsight for like what he was doing with his overall story. Like it's kind of crazy that I see things happening today and I'm like, that's just that's Palpatine 101. Like I can't believe people are doing this shit in real life. Like that's like, he's just emergency powers. Like don't give him emergency powers. That's like, we know how this plays out. Like we've seen it. Like George Lucas gave us the script. So yeah, there's definitely a strength in the maybe not in the acting and the sort of the direction of those films, but like thematically and story wise, there's a lot to love and to appreciate from the prequels, and they definitely culminate in episode 3. And you know what? There's actually, Brandon, did you ever watch our fictional fight commentary that was
so
Obi-Wan
great.
versus? So there's a lot going on in that fight that we appreciated after the fact, that we discovered while writing commentary for that fight.
Absolutely
and
true.
we're like, wow, dude, Obi-Wan is like baiting Anakin over and over and over again. And that ultimately pays off with him, the ultimate bait, with him trying to overextend himself on this from the low ground.
Yeah.
Like he just keeps putting him in the position of he keeps like checkmating him during this fight and then letting him go until ultimately he just can't. He's just like, I'm going to checkmate you one more time, bro. And if you go for it, you're done. Like that's it. I'm done giving you chances. And it's sort of like, I have to give it up for that fight scene. You know, it's like they did a lot.
You know what's funny about that? It just occurred to me that's the only way to do a fight scene at that length and still get the outcome that's predetermined. There is no other way to do like
just to have him like just bait over and over again like that.
It's the only way to do it, because otherwise you don't get the outcome that's so if it has to be a certain length and it has to end with Anakin losing his limbs, like you can't do it any other way. Obi-Wan has to keep getting away.
Yeah.
And Anakin has to keep going after him because Anakin, Obi-Wan can you imagine if Obi-Wan was just brutally attacking Anakin the whole time and they like lopped off his limbs? He would be like the most evil person in the Star Wars series, you know?
Yeah,
So,
he'd be. Wow, there's like a. Is that yours, Brandon? That dog? Yeah, that dog is going nuts. But yeah, it'd be more like a Monty Python fight, you know, from the Holy Grail. Just like one limb at a time, just until finally he's like, I've got no more limbs to fight you, bro. I guess I'm done.
I'm done. Just leave me here. I hate you.
But how hardcore of a move is that? Where like one fell swoop, you lose 3 limbs. Like that's, dude, you are so whack. Like you overextended yourself to the max if you lose 3 limbs in the bargain.
He shouldn't have quadrupled the split power.
He shouldn't have.
The funniest part of that fictional fight commentary is when they're doing the spin, and then they
spin.
It's like, what the hell just happened?
Because it was just pure flash, and I get so mad. We knew it was gonna happen, but we did it anyway. But people in the comments were just trying to justify it, like, no, they were feeling each other out, and they're so in tune with each other's abilities that there was no openings, so they just kept spinning. And I'm like, dude, fuck you. That is just. I have done enough martial arts and like forms competitions to recognize pure flash when I see it. There's nothing fight like related about what just happened. It was just like, do a cool move and we're gonna film it just to add some spice to this visual, you know. So they both stopped in front of each other and did sick moves. There was like a freestyle moment. We play those like Just Dance games with the Kinect. Have you ever played those?
Oh man, yeah.
Where like you got to follow the beats, right? There's there's directions they give you, and then for like one moment they're like, all right, it's on you, baby, freestyle, and you got to just do your own, like, you know, your fresh moves, whatever you got. That's what that was. That was the one moment they gave each other to just do some sick flows or whatever, and then they're back in the fight. That wasn't fighting what they were doing at all.
We were absolutely going to make fun of that moment. I mean, that was the drop moment in Dance Fight 66. You know, we were all over that moment from the very beginning. That had to get some a little bit of love.
Oh, that's when the bass drops, right?
Yeah, that's the drop in the track. Is like that move.
With that awesome like equalizer that like came out from the display that was of like heat. That was like the magma,
the heat equalizer.
The equalizer.
Oh man. So I guess we can start dipping into fan questions now. So basically,
sure.
So basically, what I did was I when I was on your Discord channel, I'm on your Discord server. So I went into the chat and asked, "Hey, I'm interviewing them for the podcast. DM me any questions you have." So the first question comes from Ian the Texan on your Discord server.
Yes, Ian.
Yeah, my boy Ian.
Okay, so first question is, when it comes to your creative process, do you like to focus on one idea at a time, or do you keep a lot of irons hot in the fire in case one doesn't work out?
That's a good one. That's a great question.
I think it's a mix.
It's a mix for sure.
Some scenes we just know what the joke is right away. In some cases.
Yeah, and we try not to limit ourselves. We'll throw down a lot of ideas in the brainstorming phase, and I think all of them are on the table until you start chipping away at the thing. And then as you start chipping away, you're forced into certain things. Like you start realizing that certain jokes don't work anymore. Maybe new jokes will work. And then sometimes we'll go right up to the end and be like, oh my God, if we just tie these two things together with like one bit of dialogue, then we've told a better joke, you know? So I think right up until the end, we're still flexible. In terms of the more subtle bits, we do have a pretty specific idea going in though. Before we do any editing or dialogue, we have a really good idea of what the story is. So that's something that I think is I'm not sure if that's keeping the irons hot or not.
Yeah.
Maybe that's I don't know. So yeah, I think you're right, Zach. I think it's a mix.
Yeah. I'd like to give you an example. It's my favorite example because episode 5 was probably the hardest one to do because it's just like visually, it's just the most serious version of the film. It was really hard to like make things look funny because the film overall just has such a darker tone. And at the end, you've got this weird fight between Uncle Anakin and Luke and Duke. They're like doing midichlorians together. We're like, how do we make this scene? Like, what do we do? What do we say here? And so we had this big thing where the whole joke there was like for Anakin to say, "I am not your father." Or
Yeah,
something
we knew that joke was.
How do we make fun of the "I'm your father" joke? So that was sort of the basis there. And overall, it just became no matter how hard we tried, it was just very serious. And then the way we solved it is this was like at the very last minute. Like we were straight up about to upload this to YouTube. And then we were like, we got to have Vader say one more thing. And so all he really says, he just goes, "You're a madman, Duke." That was it. And it sort of like just added like levity to the whole thing.
Yeah, totally.
Where like it was lacking, we think, at that point. So it was just, yeah, sometimes I think we're really good at self-censoring, and we're good at like realizing when something's not working and what we need to do to.
Yeah, sometimes we'll talk for months and months about a particular joke as if it's a foregone conclusion that that's what it's going to be. Right. And then we get into the edit and it just does not work. Because we don't sit down with the films and go through it like scene by scene and try to find the jokes, on that micro level. So what ends up happening is, say, for example, we have an idea that the first sequence is going to be a new context, like in episode 7, say that opening scene with Kylo coming down is like a whole different context. We'll know what that new context is, and then we'll start, writing what the jokes or some dialogue might be. And then you realize once you get into the scene, you're like, oh, that character only has like lip flap for like 5 seconds, and that's not going to work for what we want the dialogue to be. So we'll have to start rethinking and recrafting the scene a little bit. But typically, I don't think that we've ever gone into a scene and it's become like radically different. I think most of the scenes tend to be what we thought they would be in the brainstorming stage. And we often go a lot from memory of from what we remember of the film. Which I think is healthy because you can get kind of stuck going down rabbit holes if you're like watching the movie and trying to find out what the jokes are. Mm-hmm. That works with things like audio jokes. We were watching when we were watching Phantom Menace, when Darth Maul went over the cliff, I was like, oh my God, that has to just be an accident. Like he has to drive off the cliff and just crash, and that's it. Like it's just an audio joke. That's the kind of thing you might find like watching the movie, these sort of visual triggers. Dialogue is tough.
911.
Yeah, that was like another late addition. It was like, what does the robot do? And there were some earlier drafts that were really dark too. Like I think in one of the earlier drafts, the robot was trying to talk him out of doing it. Like it was really dark.
We made it like it was a suicide. Like he did it on purpose. Yeah. So dark. Yeah, the robot was like, "You have so much to live for."
Yeah,
like it was.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was like too much. Sometimes we do explore things that are just we're looking at it and we're like, that's not what we want to say. We don't want to go. That's just too dark. It's just too.
I can't remember my favorite too dark one. I don't know if it made it in there or not. I can't remember now. I have to watch it. But in the holiday special Bane, like the immediate follow up to Bane outtakes, when he was like, Bruce Wayne was like in the movie he was in pain, but in ours we made it like he's like excited that Santa was coming. Did that make it in there? He's like, "Yay, Santa!" I don't remember if we cut that or not.
I don't remember either. I don't think it's in there, but it might be.
It was like Bane trying to get an excited Bruce Wayne to go to sleep. He's like, "If you don't go to sleep, Santa won't come." And he's like, "Yay!" And we were like, "Man, this is really jacked up. We might have to cut this." I gotta watch it now. I gotta see where we ended up on that. But I remember having a conversation about how dark that was, because in the movie he was like being paralyzed and imprisoned, and we're like, no, this is too weird.
Oh my God. Okay, so this next question also comes from Ian. He asks, which idea that didn't work was the hardest to leave out or let go?
Ooh, another great question.
Yeah.
I don't think I don't have any regrets about anything that got left behind. I don't.
Yeah.
I tend to be really opinionated in the edit. Like I get really. Sometimes I'll really try to work something in, even if, I mean, I shouldn't really say that. We do censor ourselves fairly well, and Zach and I have a good relationship of keeping each other in check. That's something that's really like we are laughing all the time and we are joking, but when it comes to really trying to tell the best joke, we've gotten into some pretty good fights. But I can't really think of anything that got left behind where I was like, oh man, I just wish that had been in there. Zach, how about you?
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm thinking right now, like while you answer, I'm going to be thinking about this.
Yeah, we've had conversations where like certain things, everything I feel like has happened for the best. So like whatever we put out there ended up being what we felt was the best version of whatever we were going for. So even if like the only thing I can think of recently was just, and we made it work, but I was like really pushing to have Lando show up in that rap and say like, who wants a beer? I just wanted to rhyme. I just wanted to make a beer joke about Corona because everybody was being so stupid about it that like the sales of the Corona beer actually started dropping because people just thought you got sick from it because we're just so dumb. So it's like that just like using a sample like hip hop style of like Lando being like, who wants a beer?
I will say that it's not quite the same thing, but sometimes I will be watching something back after we've released it and I'll be thinking, oh damn, we missed a good joke there.
Yeah.
You know,
and I love how you do it too. You get like you get mad at separately as like an outside of it. You get mad at yourself and me. You're like, why didn't we think of that joke? I'm like, why didn't we think of everything? I don't know. Like it's impossible to have all the jokes.
Yeah, I'm certainly not one to go back and just knock ourselves around because we missed something, but that does happen. You know, you go back and you look at something and you're like, like the right way to button up that joke might have been just a little bit funnier if we had done it slightly different or if we'd added in one more beat of this or that. But for the most part, like I can't think of almost any examples where we didn't. And I think that comes down largely to the idea that we're just such a small team. You know, it's only 2 people. We don't have to really do a lot of compromising in the end. You don't have to fight with, you know, all the other producers and the director.
The writer's room. Yeah, even like writer's rooms are all fighting with each other to get their material in the thing. Like we mostly get like what you see ends up being a really good representation of both of our goals, you know?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And then on occasion we'll plan to do an entirely individual piece rather than one small thing within a piece. Sometimes we'll be planning to do a new video and then we, for whatever reasons like scheduling or the timing isn't right or we won't do it. And then we might be like, we should have done that video. It was the right time to do it and we didn't get the chance to do it. So that does happen, but I think that happens with everything, everywhere, all the time. You know, there's no getting around that in any field.
Yeah. Well, it's good to know that you guys are able to stick with the things you write or don't really have to scrap anything, you know.
Yeah, we just don't have a lot of checks on us aside from one another, and then we will share things with people to get their opinions and whatnot. But yeah, we tend to. I don't think either of our visions, separate as they may be or together as they may be, are ever compromised. You know. Yeah. So there isn't really a lot of time where something might get removed. You know.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I also take other people's opinions on our work with a grain of salt because I'll never forget. We got from our friends from Bane Outtakes before we released it. People were like, "Don't release this. Like, this is weird. It doesn't make sense. It's too long." We're like, okay, well, thanks for the input. And then we released it anyway. And it's still our most popular video. So it's like, all right, you know, maybe people aren't always going to give the best advice when it comes to how everyone else is going to react. Like sometimes you just don't know how the internet is going to take something, you know? So we sort of learn to trust ourselves a little bit too, because we're weird. And some things like on paper don't make a lot of sense that we come up with. And we just sometimes have to be like, trust us. So we're going to release this and it'll be okay. Like it'll do fine. Like it's like, there's an audience for this. Like that's one thing we've learned. So, yeah, I don't mean to I'm not crapping on our friends or anything. Cause sometimes like if somebody showed me Bane Outtakes and I had nothing to do with it, I'd be like, I probably would have thought the same thing. Like it's just disjointed and nonsensical and it was too long for at the time. Like it was like 7 minutes long. There was no 7-minute long YouTube videos. And, YouTube is just hard to predict on that front too, because now YouTube is like, make your videos now that's too short. Like now your videos have to be like 20 something minutes to get like algorithm love.
Right,
So it's
right.
like you just make whatever
Yeah.
you want and just put it out there, and you can't. You're never gonna guess what is going to hit or not. It's not at a certain level. It's not up to you. So all you can do is just make something you think is great, and that you think people will enjoy. That was not.
Yeah, Zach,
what's
you're
that?
kind of.
Yeah, Zach's cutting
well,
out.
Are you cutting in and out? Yeah. Okay. I'm hearing you cutting in and out.
I
Zach.
mean, I'm recording on my end at least, so hopefully that's still intact. But
Yeah, the
yeah.
recording's still going. I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure. But yeah, it's just.
I was just dropping
cutting in and out.
just
Gotcha.
positive life lessons that were completely unrelated to the question. So I'll do that. I'll tangent some shit, like no problem. It's my superpower. I'll throw a tangent out there, just like a bag of marbles on the ground. You'll.
So this next question, I was gonna save this. I was gonna go ahead with this next question, but I'm gonna save this one for last. So this next question comes from Ninja Tweak. So I asked Craven about this before the podcast. Ninja, I'm rearranging your wording a little bit. So he was asking about your first helmet, but since you were that it's your only helmet, what inspired to keep the helmet on during your videos when you guys are on camera?
Oh, that's a good question. I think it's just sort of who I am, which is funny because like we were talking about with Spear Questers, I'm just out there front and center as a character in the show. But I think there is a certain level of identity sort of masking there because it's not like a big secret or anything, but I do have sort of a different day job that's sort of separate from Auralnauts, and they do sometimes overlap a little bit in terms of the work I'm doing. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just sometimes the work that we do as Auralnauts could potentially like rub somebody the wrong way. Right. Not in any way that would have any terrible consequences, because the work that we do is largely innocuous. But that is a little bit of a factor. So that's part of it for sure. And then I just am in love with anything astronomy, like all of it.
Yeah, it makes total sense.
There's been an uptick in NASA themed gear on the streets too. I've been seeing kids, just randomly wearing NASA shirts and like the kind of like the jacket you have. It's
Oh, when I found that jacket, I was so stoked.
That's a great jacket. And I've seen other
NASA
people
bomber,
wearing similar stuff, and it's just kind of it's pretty cool in the same way that I'm seeing a lot of like people wearing more and more like Thrasher tees, because growing up Thrasher was like a skate brand that was an outlier, sort of like an outsider thing to be into, and to see it with like on more and more kids of diverse backgrounds is really cool to me. And I feel the same way, but like I see all these NASA shirts and stuff, and I'm just like, dude, there's so much NASA flexing going on out on the streets. I love it. Get these kids into STEM right now, and it's like, I don't know, it's just beautiful. It's just cool that these like nerdy things are becoming like more ingrained in pop culture.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So one last question comes from Ian.
Boy,
again.
Ian hooking us up, Phil, with the filler. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm laughing at this one. Okay. Do you think a full menu coleslaw food truck would be successful?
You know what? At this point, I'm thinking that it has a chance.
Bro. 100%. I would be standing in line at that.
There's so many
truck.
odd like food
would
truck.
Would it be weirder than any other food trucks? Well, actually, yes, it would.
I've seen like,
of course,
I've seen like there's a restaurant. It was a pop-up restaurant. It was all Cheeto themed dishes, and like everything was made out of Cheetos. And I was like, dude, that sounds so awesome and disgusting at the same time. In the same way that
oh my god, my regret in not getting there to that
oh, you knew about
restaurant.
It? Like you heard about that too?
I knew about the Cheeto restaurant, and I didn't get there, and I feel like that's the biggest regret.
I'm feeling the same way. I'm feeling the loss of it in my life. Just.
Yeah, are you kidding me?
If you hit it with the right coleslaw variety, I think that it has a chance. Depends where you go. You got to go somewhere like real hipster or really gentrified and make people think that that's like You know, because like when Cronuts first came out, people were literally lining up around the block. Like you go outside a place that had Cronuts, and you'd think that they were releasing a new iPhone.
Yeah.
I was like, dude, it's a Cronut. Are you insane? Like, just go get a croissant and eat a donut and just put it in the same bowl or something. Like it's not that great. But you convinced enough people that it's, you know, it's the new thing. You're gonna move some coleslaw.
I'm really trying to figure this out. Like I can't figure out if it would work or not.
We
I'm
should
trying to
partner
piece it
with
together in my head.
some culinary outlet for our next live event. We should have a fucking coleslaw food truck. Yeah,
A coleslaw
You would need to balance
truck?
it out with some carbs.
Oh,
like that's
shit.
the only way to do it. You got to serve it with like a piece of bread or something.
No, you can't. No. Well, I mean, we could take a look at
Yeah.
our own menu that we created. We did create a full menu.
I'm thinking of the one that like
For the last
I
Laser
came up with one.
Master.
It was called like the heart attack or something like that because it was so much oil in it. And I was just like, dude, this would crush me. I'd need so many Tums. And so I would need I was thinking what I would need, and I was like, I'd need a piece of bread or something to go with that, to soak up some of that that damage, you know.
Yeah.
So you get some with like maybe a peanut, you know, glaze on it or something like that. You get a little crunch to it. It's not just cabbage.
nice
You got to get like a
glaze.
little. I don't know the right kitchen terms, but there's like a peanut, you know, drizzle or something, you know, like a little crunch to it.
Yeah.
It's not just cabbage, you know. It's
Right. Get a little crunch in there.
it's all about balance in the kitchen, you know. That's when you're.
When like chicken or beef is like the secondary ingredient in a dish.
Yeah.
That's the
Yeah,
the
we
way
had
to
some
roll.
real.
That's what the
Yeah,
coleslaw,
the coleslaw
truck is all about.
putting everything else on the back burner and coleslaw right up front and center. You know,
How many employees does the Death Star have? Like,
Oh man, great
Laser
question.
Moon 2?
it's in the millions, right? Like it's a planet. It's the size of a planet, like a small planet. It's
Oh my God, Zach, did you catch that conversation? Brendan, did you guys catch that conversation about like Edmund was in there and a couple other people? The idea was like when they ordered Jim's, I had never thought of this before, but it's like when they ordered for takeout, was it coming from another place on the Death Star or from somewhere
in
else
my
in
head.
the
It was like
galaxy?
it was all Death Star. Like even the people. Yeah, even the people
Oh,
in the
really?
Shield.
Oh, there's
I wasn't
there's
sure.
Over 500,000 dining
Yeah.
experiences.
And then the question was, how long would it take to get from one place on the Death Star to
Oh,
another?
are you
Like,
think?
would it
Were
take
you
a half
asking
an
if
hour,
like
Domino's?
Jim's was on the Death Star?
Jim's coleslaw,
to
yeah.
me, Jim's coleslaw was somewhere else. Like they had to like.
Oh,
Yeah.
I always thought that too. I always kind of thought it was somewhere else in the galaxy, but the idea that it was a location on the
Yeah.
Death Star itself
See, to
was
me,
hilarious.
no one would be.
because you would still need to order for takeout,
Yeah.
you know, for delivery. Like,
To me, no one would be that stoked about a place that existed where they worked.
that
Yeah,
was-
they'd
was
be
on
tired
the-
of that shit. They were so excited about Jim's because it was off site. You know, you
Yeah.
got to go somewhere like special
Right.
to get that sort of reaction. You know, that you're not getting that from like.
Right, and I love that the guys are ordering it as they're
Yeah.
flying in. You know, they didn't bring it with them.
It's like, dude, you guys could have picked it up on your way. Yeah, that's like someone at the mall. Like if you worked at the mall, you wouldn't get that excited about Panda Express. You know, you're just like, that's just what's there every day. But if you get like, you know, Taco Bell or something that you can't get
Right,
in
right,
the
right.
mall, you know, that's. I don't think I've ever
Exactly.
seen a Taco Bell in a mall. That was the only example I could come up with. I get that excited for Taco Bell in real life because there's no good Taco Bells in the city. So it's like when I go back to like Colorado, I'm like, let's get Taco Bell. And people are like, no, dude.
No.
All right. Yeah. You tried to wrap us up there and I went on another tangent, baby. Throwing those tangents down.
it's no worries.
Slipping and sliding on them tangents.
I think we're actually reaching the
Oh,
90-minute
yeah.
mark, so I think we're gonna have
Oh,
to
yeah.
wrap it up here, so Nathan doesn't have to die editing.
Sorry, Nate.
Sorry, Nathan.
So yeah, all right, guys. I can't thank you enough for being on. You guys have a podcast yourself, right?
Search for Auralnauts.
We
That's,
do.
On anything except Spotify, I think.
Awesome. Yeah, we'll have to. I'm definitely gonna put all those links and stuff in the description below. If you guys want to go check it out, I'm gonna link their channel
Nice.
as well. And so, Zach, Craven, I can't thank you guys enough for being on this podcast.
Man, thanks for having
This
us.
is something I've been wanting to do for a long time. So
Oh man, it's our pleasure. thanks so much for having us. Honestly, like it's always great to just share, ideas with like-minded people,
Hell yeah.
and it's totally we love it.
Yeah, and
So,
you've been there, supporting us. Whenever I was on Twitch, you'd be there to support us. So it's great to be able to throw some favors back at you for all the times you've been there. So.
But yeah, guys, thank you so much. Yeah. All right, guys, if you like this video and like Hyperspace Hype 101, be sure to check out our other videos. We'll have other links in the description below. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. And with that, have a great day, everybody, and may the force be with you always.